Hey guys, it's Shawn. Welcome. Thanks for joining me again today. If you've been here before, I really appreciate you coming back. If you haven't, welcome. If you're watching this video, either you're just one of our lifelong learners who's looking at how to get better at business issues, getting more familiar, maybe improving your business, or maybe you are thinking about having a board meeting. You have an upcoming, or you want to have an upcoming board of directors meeting. Well, this video is for you. It's going to help you help prepare and think about conceptually about some of these issues around the next meeting of your board of directors. Board of directors meetings, we'll talk about in good detail. They are usually fairly simple to call and to process, but there are some technicalities and details, things you'll want to check out to make sure you don't hit any unexpected problems. And that's really what this video is about, is making sure you kind of have that foundation of what happens and what doesn't happen with board meetings and how things come together. As always, we're touching on a legal issue, but of course you can't do legal advice over YouTube. I'm here, you're there. I don't know your situation. So this is just educational, informative stuff. Consult your counsel. Go talk to your lawyer about these issues. Also, we don't do investment or financial advice on the channel. Board meetings are usually easy to call, meaning they are easy to get one to happen. Right. Sometimes they happen annually as part of your annual cycle that may be contemplated in your bylaws, may be contemplated in your state law. But there's also usually provisions in your bylaws and perhaps your state law talking about how you can call a board meeting. And so usually they're not too hard to call. You're going to want to look at your state law. You're going to look at your bylaws, how those two interact. But most likely, if you have a standard set of bylaws, it probably has a provision in there saying that, maybe the chairman of the board can call a meeting of the board. You may also have provisions stating that, a certain percentage of board members acting together can call a board meeting. Or you might have board meetings set up to occur on a certain timeline. So it's usually easy to get a board meeting in. You just have to look at what those provisions are. And then also, usually, not only do you need certain people to call it, but you'll have notice provisions. If your board's friendly, everybody's getting along, everything's good, you generally can get all the directors to waive the notice. Let's say you have 7 directors. You want to have a meeting next week. You can get everybody's schedule aligned if that's at all possible. Figure out who can attend. Everybody says, yes, we're going to do it. And everybody just waives notice, and you have your meeting next week. Easy peasy. Maybe you have your meeting, you have 7 directors, you all agree to have a meeting next week, but 1 or 2 of them can't show up. They just waive notice too. Again, you've called your meeting, you got appropriate waiver. You just, under most state laws, most bylaws, that's not a problem, right? You just get everybody to agree that, yes, this meeting was called and I'm not going to make a big deal out of notice. If you have a director who's problematic, or maybe you've lost track of a director, somebody's on your board, but you don't have their current mailing address, phone number, you may have to allow some time for notice, whatever that may be, right? However long after you set up the meeting, set the date and time of the meeting, you may have to send out a formal notice of the meeting and then wait some period of time before you have the meeting. But regardless of any of that, the point is it's usually systematically easy to call a meeting. You can get a meeting put together, usually without a ton of effort. Then you want to move into preparation, and preparation is key for a board meeting. What's going to happen at the board meeting? What's going to be discussed? There's usually a reason why you want to have a board meeting. Usually some business transaction is being contemplated, right? Maybe a merger, maybe a strategic transaction, maybe an approval of something. Maybe you have an affiliated transaction, right? So you want to think about why you're having this board meeting and then start thinking about the preparation. What is going to happen at this board meeting? What information do our directors have? Can we get them informational packets? Companies that are usually very effective like to send the information out to the board members in advance so they can review it, so they can see it. Either send it directly to the board members, send it to their lawyers. If you have board members that have lawyers or staff, you may send it to their staff who then preps it for them. But you want everybody to understand the issues, understand what's going on, understand what is contemplated for the meeting, and be ready to discuss the major issues and vote, right? Because as we talked about in prior video here on the channel, and I hope you go check it out, we talked about the fact that your board of directors is really that kind of manager, fiduciary of the business. They're the ones that are setting the strategic direction. So they need the information to set the strategic direction, right? They need to know what's going on in the business, what's being contemplated, what the terms are, so that they can really apply their business analysis of good, bad, changes, whatever. So you really want to prepare your board for success by giving them the information they need and the details that they'll want. You want to anticipate that in advance of the meeting. Now, do you draft meeting minutes before the meeting? This is common with lawyers where a meeting is coming up in the future and they know what might or might not be discussed at the meeting. I often do this with my clients. If we know a meeting is coming up, I will often put together the meeting minutes before the meeting. Now, those aren't the official minutes. They're draft minutes, meaning just that. They're a draft, and they can change. And often they don't change much, right? We prepare the draft. We talk about what's going to happen at the meeting. We set the meeting up. Meeting happens. They look at the draft meeting minutes. They follow it as a process. They do the things, and then they update the meeting minutes. Not a lot of changes. Sometimes the discussion goes whole new directions. Sometimes issues not contemplated come up. Sometimes there's material changes, right? So you need to figure that out. But in most cases, it's not a bad idea to spend some time in advance drafting the meeting minutes. And these probably be drafted perhaps by the attorneys who are overseeing things to make sure that, quorums are obtained, votes are obtained, things are done in a legally compliant manner. And then the business people can take it over. Ultimately, your minutes are usually going to be signed by your corporate secretary. So they'll have the ultimate responsibility. They can edit or change whatever is prepared as a draft. But it's usually a good idea to go ahead and draft those meeting minutes. It gives you a good idea of what's happening, tells you how long things might take, and allows people to anticipate what's going to happen. And then again, if things change, you can address them. You can address those changes in the draft before it's officially entered into the books and records of the company. And that way you have a good, clean record of what happens. But it also gives you kind of a script and an outlay of what the meeting is at least contemplated to do if you do follow that process. The actual meeting is really, the key part. That's the key existence of a board of directors, is them coming together, talking, discussing, right? And so there is kind of a magic to a board meeting. And sometimes I get concerned when companies use written consents too much. Now, usually your state statute will authorize written consents, particularly unanimous written consents. And sometimes they're perfectly appropriate. But there's a magic to a board meeting and talking and working through issues and maybe finding new insights and finding new connections. That is magic. But your meeting is going to happen. You're going to make sure you have generally a quorum, whatever's required under your bylaws or state law is applicable. So you make sure you have enough people there. And then you're generally going to have issues come up, you're going to have discussions, and you're going to have votes on those issues, right? That's really the process of a board meeting. And if you ever look at some of the drafts I put together for minutes and the ones that my clients often complete, we talk about why the meeting's happening at the beginning, but then we have a major issue. We have a discussion of that issue. We have somebody make a motion, and then we have a vote. And this process repeats over and over again and usually concludes with some kind of general authorization. The board approves most transactions. They could reject a transaction, but, it depends on where the votes are and what happens. But whatever the board does approve, what you often want to do is at the end, you want to empower the officers and directors to carry out actions in furtherance of what the board approved, right? This is not only authorizing the thing, but authorizing kind of the administrative completing section. But the meeting is about getting everybody together, either in person with video or maybe all video, but you get everybody together in a way that complies with state law and your bylaws. And you call the meeting to order, and then you process the issue sequentially, and you take minutes of it, and you vote on things, and your meeting's done, right? That's what a board meeting looks like. It's usually not a big deal. We can tear it apart more in a future video if that's something you're interested in, like what actually is the mechanics of a board meeting. But that's the high-level issues: following your corporate law, following your bylaws, bringing everybody together, raising issues, and voting on issues. After you're done, you usually want to take your time to wrap it up. And so that means not just formally concluding the meeting, but then your secretary of the meeting needs to get on the process of updating and preparing the minutes and get those ready. Now, a lot of companies or nonprofits will take those minutes that are prepared at the end of the meeting, and they'll get them ready for the next meeting and send everybody a draft, and then they'll approve those minutes at the next meeting, which is perfectly fine. It's common. It makes sense in most cases. Usually fine under your state law and bylaws, but just make sure. But you want to wrap things up, and you want to put things in a nice bow, and then you want to update your corporate records too, right? So you have the meeting. You want those minutes to go into your corporate records so you know you had it and there's a good record of what happened. So getting things cleaned up and neatened up after the meeting is often important when you go back years later and you're looking for approvals, consents, authorizations, and what the board did, right? So it becomes important. It's not as important in the short term that you have all those minutes there unless you're in the middle of litigation. But in the long term, those minutes become very important. So you want to do them, and you want to do them contemporaneously. A lot of things come up in a board meeting, but it's not something to freak out about. They are very common. They are very process-oriented. There's a lot laid out in your state law and your bylaws. So just follow the process of that and pull the things together. Don't overthink it. It can be a simple thing, but it's also a very powerful thing. There's a magic to getting the board discussing things. It unlocks things. Maybe it leads to new ideas and innovations for the company. Whatever the case may be, I wish you the best of luck with it. Drop me comments. Let me know what you're seeing with your board meetings. Don't put confidential information in these comments, obviously, because it's YouTube and other people can see it. But I do want to hear about what you're seeing out there. Also, would love to know what other issues you have for future videos. All right, check out some of these other videos here in the end cards, and then feel free to comment, subscribe, give me a like so I know you've been here and that more people see this video. And I hope you join me for more videos in the near future. Shawn McBride signing out.